No, we haven't found the Freddie Forsyth piece in the actual Daily Express, but we have a look again. The Express, which is typical of the racism of Fleet Street, one of the worst racist offenders. So for all of the people that Express running a column, even remotely sympathetic to the campaign for justice for Shamima Begum, is very, very, very remarkable. So that is the reason why we're running it. We are not running it or quoting it or referring to it because we agree with Frederick Forsyth in his imagery and his dismissive and insulting comments about East London and even about Shamima Begum herself. What we are doing is providing a kind of point of reference that to contrast the Daily Express's kind of acknowledgement, even though it is acknowledged in a reluctant kind of way and prejudiced language used by Freddie Forsyth. But the contrast is with the rest of Fleet Street, which is not even mentioning Shamima Begum as if she doesn't exist. And today's cancellation, just in the last few hours, the reported organizer of the vigil that was supposed to take place at 1800 hours GMT today in London in honor of Sarah Everard. It has been reported that that vigil has been cancelled, and it has been further reported that they will be making the organizers or her supporters would be issuing a statement tomorrow, that is Sunday, about the various future events. Of course, the cancellation of the vigil has been described as being linked to the police, the Metropolitan Police that are opposing the vigil. Now, on what evidence they're opposing it and why it is being thought by anyone that a peaceful vigil in honor of Sarah Everard constituted or could constitute any kind of cause for concern. If it is connected with the safety or security issues about the coronavirus and the social distancing and the lack of social distancing that might occur during the vigil, it could be one of the reasons, but overall, nobody, neither the Home Office, most certainly not the Home Secretary, not Sadiq Khan, the so-called mayor at the expense of London, nor any member of the parliament that I can see, apart from Rosina Alin Khan, who has done a few Twitter posts, and I have noticed. So there is no real kind of political, in terms of the establishment of the political acknowledgement of the horrible, horrific, and horrifying thing that happened, a Metropolitan policeman murdering a young woman or any woman. This is something that should not be allowed. This murder and this attack must not be allowed to go away, that is to say, be forgotten. It must not be allowed to be forgotten. And this must turn out to be the point, or should be the turning point. And those who are saying that women should be taking part in the vigil and the campaign for safety for women in the streets, they are wrong. The whole community should be. And separating women from the rest of the population is unwise, impractical, and it is likely to cause a lot of misunderstanding. We should all unite, men, women, and others, whatever the designations, in the context of the contemporary debates, etc. All the people in the community must unite genuinely to oppose all kinds of violence against all kinds of women, all women, young people, young children, young girls, old women, middle-aged, all women, females that have been the subject of violence so far must be brought to an end. How that will be brought to an end, of course, remains to be decided by the actual strength of the unity and the strength of the movement. If the organizer who said that all women must be on the guard, I mean, that is fine, but there should not be any discouragement to men supporting women against violence against women. And as we said, in the context of the November 2020 gang rape in Bangladesh, gang rape of a young woman who was visiting the MC College in the Sylhet town, with her husband, was gang raped by a gang of criminals that actually are among the criminals that rule the so-called youth wing or wings of the political party called the Awami League, which is called, in English is called the People's League. And the People's League is the one that claims to be in control of the government today, has been for the last 10, 12 years. And we have said we are not connected with any party and we are not linked with any party directly or indirectly whatsoever. We have no connection with any party whatsoever. But we are connected with Bangladesh and the people, ordinary people of Bangladesh, the plans, the environment, and everything about Bangladesh. We are connected with that, with those, but we are not connected with, and we should not be connected with any party, group, or gang. What we have said, therefore, is completely objective, international, and we have said that rapists must not live in Bangladesh. That is what we have said, and that is what we have meant, and that is not being done. This should be done. Once it becomes practice to make it impossible for rapists to live in Bangladesh, rapes will decline rapidly, and eventually rapes will disappear. That's what we think should happen, and that's what we think is the only way that rapes will be stopped. I mean, there is no need for describing the horrors of the crime of rape and sexual violence. Too horrific even to think about it, let alone to talk about it. So Bangladeshis, all justice-thinking Bangladeshis, must support the call that rapists must not live in Bangladesh. And the gang rapists that raped that young person in Sylhet in November 2020 must be made an example of, and they must be made to pay for that. And they must also we made the example so that rapists do not live in Bangladesh. Okay, back to Sarah Everard and the horrifying information that a London Metropolitan policeman who is in post at the time, who is actively employed at the time, has now been arrested as the kind of formal phrase goes, on suspicion of murder and other things. That is too much. This should be treated with the same kind of shock and horror that created or added the new impetus to the Black Lives Matter movement in the US, although the slogan had existed prior to that murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis by the policeman. The phrase Black Lives Matter received the most extraordinary impetus and fillip, that is encouragement. And there must be something along that line after this murder by a serving policeman of this woman, Sarah Everard. Tokens are fine, vigils are fine, and processions are fine, flowers, bouquets are fine, but they will not stop the violence. And as a society, as people, ordinary people, we owe much more to the previous victims and this victim and all the other possible targets of violence against women. A lot more. And I'm surprised. I'm not surprised in the sense of being kind of aware of his unfitness, but I am surprised that Keir Starmer has not hit the headlines with anything to protect women from violence and stop violence against women. And I'm also surprised, but not surprised in the same way, because I think all of them are unfit for purpose. No front bench person, as I said, except Rosina Alin Khan. And I don't think she was tweeting in the capacity of her small position in the shadow cabinet or shadow kind of minister. Apart from her, in my knowledge so far, I haven't seen any member of the Labour Party's front bench or anyone in the Labour Party in Parliament hitting the headline about the absolutely outrageous, totally devastating crime committed against Sarah Everard. This is not something that anyone should be playing any kind of tactical political games over. Of course, I don't expect Boris Johnson to say anything. I don't expect the Conservatives to say anything or do anything. So who are the people in Parliament that are doing anything to change the status quo of violence against women and the acceptance of violence against women? So I have checked this copy of the Express today, and I can't find Freddie Forsyth anywhere about Shamima Begum or about anything else. So if the Express has got if the Express printed version has got anything by Frederick Forsyth about Shamima Begum, we would be very interested to know, and we'll update the kind of narrative accordingly when that happens, when that is found. In the meantime, there is no, as I've explained, as there is no kind of print version reference by Freddie Forsyth to Shamima Begum. Let's say what the online version says. Let's find the online version. I have also to check if the two Forsyths are related. Okay, this one is time. This version of Freddie Forsyth saying, "Let Shamima return. There are far worse Brit-hating elements to tackle at home," and it is kind of labeled as comment. Now I can't find any comment in the Express as printed as I said. So let's look at this one where Freddie Forsyth is saying, when ISIS was finally defeated and collapsed, Shamima Begum ended up in a truly awful Syrian-run refugee camp where she still lives. Then she tried to come home. And then he says, Freddie Forsyth, I carry no torch for this young woman, now 21, but entertain some mystification concerning her treatment by a clearly vengeful British establishment. Now, anyone who is familiar with the Siloti language and watching this, although we are broadcasting only in English, let's say that vengeful, there is no translation for vengeful in ordinary kind of Bengali to Bengali. But the Siloti people, the Shamima Begum is clearly a Siloti girl. I mean, Siloti speaking girls, born to a Siloti family, born in England to a Siloti family. When he says that her treatment by a clearly vengeful British establishment, he's not referring to just the Boris Johnson fronted cabal, allegedly calling itself the government of the UK. But he's also referring to Boris Johnson's predecessors, Theresa May, the nasty woman, and David Cameron, who is a dedicated anti-Muslim crusader racist. Of course, Freddie Forsyth would not use any of those phrases that I have used against Cameron, Theresa May, or Boris Johnson, but that is what it is. Those people are part of the vengeful British establishment. And vengeful is the word, translating into Siloti, Zidua. Now, try saying it several times over in the same sentence. Ziduar, Ziduar, Zidua. That is what they have done to Shamima Begum. Itar holti Zidua. Ziduar bongsho holti Zidua. We are not naming anyone's kind of tribe or ancestry or family. But that's what it means in Siloti parlance, a Siloti kind of vocabulary, Siloti language. Ziduar, Ziduar, Zidua. And many times over, full of hatred and vengeance. Now, of course, we have to kind of allow for the explanation of explanation for Freddie Forsyth's use of the word vengeful. He must be referring to something. Now, as I have been saying for days now, in the context of the kind of commentary that I've been presenting and making following the 26th of February, rubber stamping, misconduct by the so-called Supreme Court, which behaved as a racist rubber stamp, corrupt court bureaucracy. This child, and I call her a child because most of the time she's still a child, because most of the time, under the reference in this context, she has been a child, only out of childhood in the last 2.5 years. But essentially, this child and the other children with her, the two others that went with her, and the fourth one that had gone to Syria reportedly in 2014, the year before, these three were photographed having been through Turkey into Syria, or passing through Turkey on their way to Syria. None of these children has been even alleged to have committed a crime. Within the process of due process and kind of legal procedure, so-called, none of these children has been even named as being an accused in a crime. Therefore, they have not been arrested for any crime. Therefore, they have not been tried for any crime. And therefore, they have not been found guilty or convicted of any crime. This is due process, international law, and the law as applies to most things in the UK, in England, in England and Wales. However twisted people who commit crime against innocent people are, we don't know of anyone. We have no idea who these people were or who this person was about who derailed Shamima Begum's life and took her away from her home and her community and her country. And we have listed the various offenses which have been committed in her being pregnant, made pregnant 3 times in a row while she was still a child, during all these pregnancies. And the trauma that this girl has been, or this child has been caused and put through, and she must be kind of suffering traumatic experience or traumatic feelings over all these things that have happened to her. And let's pause and say that we are not connected to Shamima Begum in any way other than the fact that she's a child who was let down by Tower Hamlets Council in London. And we are in the East End of London, and we are saying that she has been denied justice and due protection, as have been her friends. And all of them should be given justice and treated with justice, and the treatment begins with the council, Tower Hamlets Council, providing extensive, elaborate, effective support for her. Because the other 2 friends that she traveled along with, so far as I sit here now on Saturday, 13th of March 2021, the latest reports are that those 2 other girls, those 2 other children, were either murdered or killed or died. And so therefore the only one surviving from that group of 3 is Shamima Begum. But she's surviving with acute trauma, distress, and pain, and a sense of desolation that only she can feel. We cannot say how desolate she's been feeling. And I say this as part of the running condemnation by me and by my campaign, condemnation of all the bearded Bangladeshi Muslims. I say bearded Bangladeshi Muslim, because those kind of tags, the bearded Bangladeshi Muslims in Tower Hamlets, I mean, that is a distinct and identifiable kind of group. And that group, even if it's individual members of that group, don't have kind of significant and substantial kind of communications among one another, with one another, as a group, and while operating on moving about or moving across Tower Hamlets individually, they are identifiable as symbolizing some kind of character and character values, some kind of so-called, within quotes, qualities as Muslims, relating to the whole series of preachings on the list of duties and services owed by and offered by these bearded Muslims. I mean, it is also a well-known commercial kind of label used by many of those bearded Muslims who are mistaken by non-bearded and mainly women in the Muslim community as denoting somehow, that is expressing qualities of character that make them kind of morally higher than ordinary people, ordinary Muslims. Why am I saying all of this? Because that is true factually. It may not be the right thing for these people to think of the bearded Muslims as belonging to a higher, superior moral kind of plane, but that is what happens. Now, these people, these bearded Muslims in Bangladeshi community in Tower Hamlets, owe the duty to Shamima Begum and the community to explain what they have done. They have been doing in the last 6 years to get the Tower Hamlets Council to deliver its duty as owed to those three girls. What have these bearded Muslims, Bangladeshis, have been doing? And as far as the ethnicity linked soul cheaters, that is liars trading as solicitors, mainly cheating the Bangladeshi community, ordinary Bangladeshi kind of members, and overdoing their immigration kind of expertise, which is absolute rubbish. What have those dishonest soul cheaters been doing to speak up for the rights of these girls? What have they done? Have they done anything? If they haven't done anything, then we hold them responsible to the extent that the silence has actually contributed to the denial of Shamima Begum and denial to Shamima Begum of our protection, her rights, her claims against the local council for betraying its safeguarding children duties. Remember what we said earlier in the first part A, about the so-called Shamima Begum lawyer doing a side job of appearing to be giving expert commentary for the benefit of Vladimir Putin's hocus pocus Sputnik International, which is full of inaccuracies, not just on this occasion, but most of the Russian television coverage is ill-informed, ignorant, ill-researched, and so on, and it's consistent. For example, in July, I think, 2018, I'm speaking from memory, there was inordinate and unjustifiably kind of big claim by so-called campaigners to the effect that a woman named Sarah, now how that name is spelled, I cannot check this minute, but the name was Sarah. And Sarah was a woman from the African background and continent. And she had been treated very badly by Neom councils, housing department employees. They were racist and they were cruel and they were corrupt. And the woman was kind of subjected to all kinds of harassment by the employees in the so-called housing section in Neom Council. And what happened was that the council banned her from all kinds of things that are her rights, her data, etc., were kind of misused and misinterpreted. And the gagging kind of regime that was imposed on her, that is to say, she was not supposed to publicly speak about her ordeal at the hands of the Neom Council. That was probably the main one that she wanted lifted, and she went to the Central London County Court. Now, although Central London County Court was actually originally based in the area near the northern side of the Tottenham Court Road, it shifted and it has now been housed in the main kind of complex called the Royal Courts of Justice. And it was in one of the rooms in the Royal Courts of Justice in 2018, either July or August 2018, a hearing took place. Hearing of the application by Sarah Abdallah took place against Neom Council's gag and so on. And that hearing, that application, now we are into the third calendar year, like August 2018, 19, 20, 21. This is third calendar year. And there is no update to this day. Third calendar years on, or year on, there is no published or publicly accessible update on what happened after that to Sarah Abdallah. In the course of granting her the application or the permission that she applied for, whoever was the judge or whoever were the judges in that hearing at the Central London County Court, housed in the Royal Courts of Justice, they made serious criticism of the behavior of Neom Council employees. It was disgraceful, it was outrageous, etc., all of that. So what did the London media do about that case? Nothing. They didn't actually publish anything, really. The only publication I think occurred in the corrupt local council, local kind of newspaper or news website called the Neom Recorder. But essentially, the Evening No Standard ignored it, the Guardian ignored it, the Daily Mirror ignored it, and the rest, of course, the Daily Mail and the Scum and the Daily Express and the Daily Borisgraph, the Times, all of them ignored it. Now, I say that with the caveat, that is the condition, that if what I have just said has been inaccurate in that all these titles that I said had no item about her, did later publish the item or an item, then I shall update my commentary accordingly. But essentially, the only kind of site that actually broadcast the fact of this application to the Central London County Court was the Russian television, which is the television version of Sputnik International. Their same operation serving the whims and caprices of Vladimir Putin. Now, the interview that they conducted on that occasion about Sarah Abdullah was with the daughter of the woman who set up the E15 Mothers campaign or something, while Robin Wales was in place as the executive elected mayor at the expense of the people of Newark. Now, the interview that did the Russian television was maybe 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever the length. It wasn't very long, but whatever the length of that video that the broadcast was, contained absolutely nothing. Meaning, it did contain the image of this woman who was being interviewed, but it didn't contain anything about law, anything about illegality, nothing about the context, nothing about the history, nothing about the actual corruption. So this is the same kind of group from Moscow, of all places, that have published this series or a couple of kind of transcripts with the so-called Shamima Begum lawyer called Muhammad Tasnim Akunje. Now, Tasnim Akunje, as I said in part A, came across very detached and very much a stranger and all the other things. And he's been also spying. Overall, he's been feeding information to the MI5 and MI6, or the security services as they are called collectively, about Shamima Begum and the other children. And he has not shared what he has fed to the security services about these children. I'm not asking for details. I could not be more disinterested in the details. What I'm interested in is the impact and the actual implication morally and accountability. Why hasn't he shared even the minor fact that he has been feeding information to the spooks? And what information has he fed? And what frame of reference has he followed in becoming an agent for the duration of whatever involvement he has in the name of Shamima Begum and all the other things? Having said that, it is quite clear that this Muhammad Tasnim Akunji, is not only not an independent kind of party in terms of his kind of legal contract and legal role and locus, he is also very ignorant. And that is what is more concerning. And that is what would have been a factor if, supposing he started to so-called act as the solicitor for Shamima Begum, or for her family, or for one of her parents, like her mother is in this country apparently, while her father is in Sunamganj, and I don't think that her father is likely to return. I think he has got an established family there already again now. Now, neither Akunji nor this Times reporter, nor this ITV reporter, Rohit Kachru, who seems to have been involved in the filming of Shamima Begum wearing a kind of modern outfit on the day that the Supreme Court did the rubber stamping. So, Rohit Kachru, Tasnim Akunji, Frederick Forsyth, and a few others who have kind of publicly reported or made statements about Shamima Begum and her so-called case. I say so-called because her case was not properly advanced or advocated by anyone. And our campaign intends to make up for that gap, Post facto, of course, after the events, because Shamima Begum has now passed the childhood age. So what we have to go back to is what the council did and what the others did, betraying her, denying her the rights that she was entitled to during her childhood, which only finished or ended a few years ago, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. But this is something that we have not created, this kind of lapse. And we have caught up with the lapses and the deficits, and we are going to do our best. And as anyone can see from what references we have made, we have got the maximum substantial kind of contents about the law, about the legality, about Shamima Begum's rights, and against the people who have betrayed our rights, including by those who appeared to be legally representing her and the other children. And the banner is that children have been betrayed in Tower Hamlets by Tower Hamlets Council. And anyone from Tower Hamlets Council, including the diminutive John Biggs, must make note. Time is running out and they must start acting to compensate for their negligence of the past few years. Negligence that have destroyed lives and negligence that are potentially still capable of destroying lives. And they must not forget that we say with the knowledge that any number of children and girls in Tower Hamlets are being abused as we speak in their families, by members of their families and their relations, including being raped. These children are being raped. Now, Tower Hamlets Council must publish the fullest possible facts that doesn't violate anyone's legal rights to privacy. And we are saying this as part of the campaign and as part of the demands as in the campaign for Shamima Begum and the other children. We shall be updating, of course, accordingly in due course at every stage. We're back to Newham and the Roxana Fias disaster. Remember, we are talking at the time when there is supposed to be a campaign ongoing in Newham for scrapping that post. Scrapping that post of elected mayor. Now that is supposed to be the case because in the public domain, I don't see any evidence that there is such a campaign. And the same thing is applicable. The same thing can be said and should be said about Tower Hamlets, because the incumbent in the post of the elected mayor, John Biggs, who is described as diminutive John Biggs by Dan Sabag, writing in The Guardian during April 2018. Now, somebody said that, or somebody may have said, that diminutive should not be used against John Biggs. Anyone who thinks that it should not be used, of course, is being brainwashed. Why shouldn't Biggs be called diminutive? He is diminutive. The reason why we consider it necessary to call him diminutive is to give him a taste of how it feels to be categorized and labeled. And that's all we are doing. Because he is a racist, and he's a liar, and he's dishonest and he's corrupt. So he needs to be told things that make him feel uncomfortable, because all those things make other people uncomfortable all the time. So anyone who thinks that we shouldn't call John Wilkes divinity should answer this. We've given the explanation, and they should answer this in the standard way that we have set out. Send us a direct message via Twitter, but only the facts, not inviting us to engage in any diversionary conversation or communication. And we know who they are, these people. These are the people that are mentally servile to the point of being worse than coconuts. And anyone who is from Bangladesh or from India or Pakistan or from similar backgrounds and behaves like a coconut to a racist in any part of this country deserves to be condemned for the multiplicity of idiocy, lack of respect, shamelessness, and ignorance and worthlessness imposed by themselves. The campaign for justice for Shamima Begum is totally different from the traits of those people who are shameless, lacking in self-respect and dignity and all the rest of it. We are a universally inspired and universally motivated campaign as part of the decades of universally motivated and conducted campaigns for universal values, rights, recognition, and so forth. And we are raising Shamima Begum and her humanity to such a high international level, the like of which none of these bearded Muslim Bangladeshis or the other craven, self-confessed, self-imposed coconuts in the Bangladeshi community into our owners could foresee or can appreciate, can understand. But they will benefit. They will grab in a rush to grab hold of the benefits as the benefits follow, because there can be nothing but benefits directly following from our campaign. So we say we are absolutely confirmed and confident that Shamima Begum is entitled to rights, as are her friends, although they are sadly no longer around, but they too are entitled posthumously, that is, after the passage, to the rights that we are campaigning to establish and deliver to Shamima Begum. Now, Roxana Fiaz doesn't deserve to be in that post, because Roxana Fiaz is a coconut. She's not a coconut in the way she speaks, because she has got a kind of crafty series of phrases that she uses that disguise the fact that she's a coconut. After all her advisors, like Sadiq Khan's advisors and Lutfur Rahman's advisors, are racists, most of them. Let Roxana Fiaz deny that fact. And all her scripts are coconut scripts. And all Roxana Fiaz's lies are authorized by her coconut controllers. And those councillors in Newham that are supposedly from the community, any part of the community, are doing the community disservice, and are disgracing themselves by failing to campaign for an end to the corrupt mayor post. As I said about the political kind of demise of these people that are councillors in Newham. Biologically they are still alive, but morally and politically they are dead. So it's as I said before, it's equivalent of the age of darkness that we are living through. Ayyam Jahiliyat that existed in the Arabian kind of region before the Holy Quran was revealed and the Prophet was appointed. Because that was the center of the world's darkest of darkness. So it needed enlightening. And we've used the comparable phrase, not the religion, but the phrase. It says, let there be light. And we say that light must be shown on the darkness of Tower Hamlets, the darkness of Newham. And we shall be continuing with this analytical, factual, moral, ethical commentary, both against Roxana Fiaz's conduct and dishonesty, as well as the dishonesty done by Lutfur Rahman before Bigson, the dishonesty being perpetuated by John Biggs. This is being ended at 15:32 hours GMT on Saturday, the 13th of March 2021. We shall return in due course.